Well, joining us today in the National Security News Studios is Dr. Piet Croukamp, a political analyst from the University of the Northwest in South Africa. Hi, Dr. Croukamp. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's speak about the national dialogue that President Cyril Ramaphosa is organizing for the 15th of August. You have been quite critical in a recent article about that. So what are your views on that?
I think the problem with the national dialogue is the president hasn't given enough thought before he announced his panel of eminent persons. We don't need another dialogue about reconciliation between black and white. We don't need another dialogue between the ANC and Afrikaners. What we do need is a conversation, an honest conversation about the economy in South Africa. The fact that we have 40% unemployment, 30% of schools are dysfunctional, 70% in fact are dysfunctional, only 30% is working. The fact that state-owned enterprises are destroyed, corrupt and captured. We need to address those problems if we want to do something and mean something for all South Africans. If this dialogue has to be meaningful, or will be meaningful, it will be because we talk about the economy and not about the political system. We can do that later, but for now, the critical argument is about the economy. And I think that the big problem that I foresee, even if we talk about the economy, is the president this week said that he's not willing to renegotiate black economic empowerment, and that he sees no link between transformation and the absence of economic growth in South Africa. But that may be the heart of the problem. And unless we are willing, the ANC and the government is willing to come to the table and make compromises. In other words, say, yes, we need to adjust these policies for the best possible economic outcomes. Unless they are willing to compromise, this dialogue will be meaningless. And I think we've seen what the ANC, what they mean by dialogue and compromises, and the willingness to include other strong voices in foreign policy and economic policy in South Africa. The government of national unity is under enormous strain all the time, simply because the ANC seeks to maintain their monopoly on decision making. Even though they're just 40% of the legislature, they still want to maintain a monopoly on those very critical features of the South African political system. The economy is too important to leave in the hands of the ANC only. And I think that's where our problem starts.
Well, Rolf Meyer, who of course played a very important role in previous negotiations, says give it a chance. Do you think we should?
Well, what he says is that, he very vaguely says that we have enormous problems in South Africa, and that we need to have a discussion because in 1994 we had this discussion and it led to our liberal democratic constitution. But we have moved on. Our problems are now economic, not politics. We understand the political problems of South Africa. It's a robust society. It's a violent society. Those things we know. The real question is how to get the economy growing, to allow more people into the benefits of our economy, to get people to be successful in aspiring to become middle class. The middle class is one of the great wonders of this world. And the real question in South Africa is how do we allow large numbers of South Africans into the economy, which allows them to become part of a middle class, to enjoy the benefits of a stable society, a liberal democratic society, because they can afford it financially. And I think, like they said in American politics, it's the economy, stupid. Unless we fix the economy, all the politics we talk about it's a meaningless discussion. It's a meaningless dialogue. And that's the message I will have for Rolf Meyer. We can talk about the things you talked about in 1994, but we have different problems now. And unless we coerce politicians into talking about the things that we would like to talk about, that the poor people would like to talk about, the unemployed would like to talk about, the people who can't send their children to decent schools, that can't skill their children for the future requirements of the labor market. That's the people we need to talk about their needs, not about reconciliation between black and white and the role of Afrikaners in politics. We've moved on beyond that. That's insignificant issues compared to the real problems that we have in South Africa.
Well, do you think it's because Trump suddenly focused on the Afrikaners that he saw this as another opportunity? Well, let's focus on that instead of the economy.
Well, I have news for Trump. South Africans don't focus on the Afrikaners. It's only the Afrikaners that focus on Afrikaners and maybe Donald Trump. Even the ANC, they've moved on to that conversation that Donald Trump and Ramaphosa had in the Oval Office. We realize now that that conversation, that need for Afrikaners to have some other voice, as if they have the only voice of reason, or whether they, as if they are the only voice of reason. It's not true. The poor people of South Africa, and they express themselves. We've seen in the last election, only 15% of all South Africans that eligible vote, only 15% of that vote voted for the ANC. It's a massive vote of no confidence in the government and in the ANC. They've spoken. We now have to listen to them. They showed us that they are alienated from the liberation movement, that they seek entrance into a modern economy, that they seek employment, that they seek to enter the middle class. That's what we need to talk about. And I think the fact that we only seek to listen to the Afrikaners, or to the voices that amplify themselves by the fact that they have a powerful position in society, it's the wrong attitude. Let's talk in this national dialogue about the millions of South Africans that have no platform, no mic, no access to resources to talk on behalf of themselves. We know what they want. They showed it to us during the last election. That's what this national dialogue must be about.
So do you think the ANC doesn't have it in them to actually start talking about the economy, to talk about affirmative action, we call it black empowerment? They don't have it in them to either change that.
No, your question is the answer. I think they are afraid of the centrifugal forces that will be let loose if they start to compromise on those very important issues. I don't want to talk about the ANC's two factions, but as a way of explanation, it is not possible for Ramaphosa to go into any form of compromise if he can't, in some other way, get the buy-in of Paul Mashatile, Gwedi Mantashe, Gwen Ramagopa, Letuliaus, and even nowadays, probably the National Executive Committee of the ANC. And definitely, they won't get the buy-in of the caucus of the ANC in Parliament. We have seen that the caucus have resisted the policies, the economic policies that will lead to growth in South Africa. The caucus is an ideological, collective ideological disposition that undermines South Africa. So if Ramaphosa goes into compromise with the economy, that's where his problems will start, on the political front. But it's time for the ANC to make these difficult decisions. It's time for Ramaphosa to show leadership and to talk to the caucus and say, this is what we will be doing. I still don't know. Maybe it's possible. If Ramaphosa walks into the caucus and say, this is what will happen, there will be no other way out. That's how we're going to confront the problems that we have in the economy. Maybe they will just follow him. We don't know what good leadership is about in South Africa. We don't know if Ramaphosa shows any sign of leadership. It may well be that a significant number of ANC members follow me, and then we can get somewhere. But now we don't know, because he is too scared, too afraid to confront opposing voices within his political party. We don't know the strength of his leadership.
Well, talking about his leadership, Deputy President Paul Mashatile has been flying around the world. I mean, the air miles he's picking up and the cost of this has been very contentious in South Africa. What agenda is he driving? Because he's been seeing Putin recently in Russia.
He represents a different ideological strain within the ANC. We know that, and it's a strain that opposes Ramaphosa, that we know. But some of the people that he took with him, the cadres that he took with him to France on his recent visit, for instance, have now been granted access to a tender of 180 billion rand. And the company that actually got the tender eventually was created a few months ago. And Paul Mashatile's wife is the twin sister of one of the owners of the company. And this tender was awarded by Park Stow, the Minister of Trade and Industry, who was warned in advance that there may be compromised individuals involved in this tender process. And they still went ahead. It just goes to show the ANC cannot cure itself from its natural instincts of state capture corruption. That's how the political party feeds itself. That's how it keeps itself alive. Those are the people that they can't confront, and that they will have to, if we in some other way seek to change economic policies for the better in South Africa. And all these are problems that reflects on the likely success of this national dialogue. Look, I'm not very hopeful. Quite frankly, in all honesty, I think unless we get rid of the ANC, it is not possible to get economic growth. I think recently an economist said, you have to make a choice in South Africa. You have the ANC or you have economic growth, but you can't have both. And it turns out to be true. It turns out that there's not enough willingness to compromise, and there's not enough consensus within the ANC to do the important things in South Africa, to ask the difficult questions and to impose the difficult solutions on the complexity of different voices within the ANC.
Well, just one last point. You actually mentioned the fact that Ramaphosa has become so rich, well, also because of his, very close link to Black empowerment. He's probably one of the first recipients of it, that he doesn't understand actually the problems of his voters.
Well, you ask of a man who made 6 billion rand, if I can believe Forbes magazine, who made 6 billion rand out of Black economic empowerment without having to risk a single rand to make another rand. And he never had been competitive in any value supply chain in South Africa. So he does not understand growth and wealth. And I think the difficult question is, how do you create economic growth? How do you create the conditions that will promote economic growth? How do you attract people with money, with new money, with capital, resources to come to this political system and take the risk here and to invest in our value supply chains? He doesn't understand that. His view on it is ideological, and his view on it is that risk is something to avoid. But risk is the only way that you create wealth. There is no other way. He has never taken risk in his whole life. He became wealthy without taking risk. He's never been competitive. But those are the two factors that we desperately need to create employment and to create economic growth in South Africa. So the president doesn't understand it, and the ANC has got no institutional memory that those factors are important in the way that they maintain themselves.
Dr. Piet Croukamp, thanks so much.